So go back again, and we want to open the responsive web design document 2 in Moodle for the week. And that is this document that we were working on last time. So just as a reminder, again, we opened up our strict XHTML 1.0 final project. We opened up index, and we modified it for HTML5. So you can see from the HTML5 doc type, we were able to get rid of quite a bit of the XHTML 1.0 strict code, leaving just doc type. Your beginning HTML document, the head content was the same, the title content was the same. We were able to get rid of the old Western European character set, the 8859-1, replace that with a whole line with just meta character set UTF-8, just like that. We added the viewport, which means that the scaling will be 100% of the device, depending upon the device. There's a little description up above there. The other thing we did is add, so we'll do this today. We're creating a link that's going to go to a cascading style sheet, and it's an external style sheet. We have used internal styles within our head content. We've used internal inline styles, such as the image tag. Another one that we've added to is further down here that's inline, and then we'll be using the external style sheet as well. We already did the style type equals. Remember, we needed to do that when we validated. We had to add that to our style type equals. The image tag, so rather than including, remember on each image we included max width equals 100% and then adjust height automatically. So we don't have the auto height here, but we're telling it now for every image max width 100%. So we're rewriting the image tag. And we rewrote the body tag to be that light blue color, remember? The grid container, we already did this portion. We left it at 75% if that was your choice, or something close to that. Remember, margin left and right centers whatever that content is within the window, within the device's window. We added that thin border of black and solid style. We indented a little bit within that solid line, so within our grid container 1%. And again, if you feel like you need 1.5%, you can sure do that. And then we changed the grid container background to be white. Okay. We overwrote, again, this is what we already did with the old assignment, just review. We overwrote the background to be a light blue or whatever color you decided you liked. And then this is exactly the same. You end the style, you end the head content. We have our beginning body content. Okay, the other thing that we did on Monday, or Wednesday, I should say, so we added, remember where your heading 1 begins with your first and last name? So we added a little style, and you could do this if you missed on Monday or Wednesday. If you missed Wednesday, the other thing you want to do, so this is really critical, in your documents area, remember you've got your XHTML folder, okay? So you want to copy pretty much everything. I will be using, and I'm not using your image, so I didn't copy your image. But if I'm going to use Bo's, the puppy image, I might be using the Missoula College Lead Gold, and of course Index and Hobbies. So you can non-consecutively select the files that you need to borrow or use again, copy them, Control-C. Then you're going to create a new folder, and I would just call it something similar to HTML5 _ your last name _ this is spring 2020. The final result of this is going to be student story. So this project 1 is different. Student story is really the name of this assignment. It's going to be a complete version of you, a little bit. I wouldn't say complete, but. And then we're pasting, so what you copied from your XHTML, we're pasting into here. And then what's really important is that you open index from this folder, because we don't want to overstrike this index for that project.
In 5, open index.
In 5,
okay.
Yep. So once you copy it all there, you'll want to open it in Notepad. Okay. So I've got mine open in Notepad here. And again, the little bit we did, so this is kind of what I just described up above. So we got rid of a lot of the detail. You no longer need a root element, so that's gone. And again, the metadata is just the character set UTF-8. The viewport needs to be added within the head content, so opening head content to closing head content. I happen to put mine after title, but it doesn't have to be. The other thing we did is added the responsive, so it's a link to an external file that we have yet to create, but that's part of our job today. We'll create this file, and it's going to link to that file. We still are using internal styles. So we're using a variety of sheet styles, okay? And that was all done other than image max width. I think this was all done the other day. Ended our head content, start our body content, that's exactly the same. So where you have heading 1, we added a style that changes the viewport width to a size of 5. We tried 7.5, but it's just really big. So what 5 does, it makes your name really huge. I mean, think of it as a company name, not necessarily your first and last name. But as you get it down to a phone size, it's still large enough, it's readable. As you increase the size, then the company name becomes larger. And not that you have to have something like that, it's just this is an option. But it's part of the assignment so that you can try it. We found that 7.5 took up too much space vertically, so that's kind of the danger, is when everything gets bigger, so does the space, because there's structure around it. So this may not be the final result of what you may choose to do. Again, we're just practicing using some variation of HTML codes and attributes. So let's end with styles, and then this is exactly the same. You're heading 4, you're enrolled in the class, spring, your email, that's exactly the same. And then we decided that we wanted to add a menu, and that's what I see here. So that was the very last thing that we did. We wanted to add a menu that was above the horizontal rule. And eventually, so it's far to the left, it's bulleted, it's underscored, it's not at all what we want it to look like. But through cascading style sheets in the external file, we're going to format it so that it blocks to the right-hand side, it's horizontal, we remove the bullets, remove the underscores, and all that good stuff. So that is what we'll do today. So the code for adding the unordered list is here. So then the next thing we'll do is we'll create a new cascading style sheet. It's a UTF-8 character set. We're going to modify this navigation bar to remove the bullet associated with the unordered list. And that's the list style type is what that bullet is. We're going to remove the underline associated with the hyperlink, or it's called the text decoration. We'll look at that. We're going to align the elements along a horizontal plane rather than vertically now. And we're also going to, and then float them, so when you align them vertically or horizontally, they have to float to the left of one another, so we have to add that command or instruction in there as well. And then we're going to add some padding to separate. You need a little bit of separation space between them. We're also going to add the bar character. If you look at your keyboard, just below the backspace key, shift with that is just a straight bar. You could add all sorts of other separations between, but we'll just use a bar. We're going to change the font color to something we like. We're going to add a border to separate the elements visually. And then eventually we're going to add a drop-down menu, and it's called block style. So it'll drop, even though our menu is going to be horizontal, we want anything to drop vertically beneath a menu item that has some child pages below. We also want a hover display color, so if the mouse or fingertip is over something that you see a different color. And then when your viewer clicks a page, we want to have the on-page display. So that's going to be, again, a color choice. And we're going to add @media, so media queries for a minimum width of 488 pixels, so that when we block this down, if you imagine, you know, the menu bar blocked to the right-hand side and it's horizontal, when you make that a really skinny window, then it has to wrap around, and that would be really confusing. So then we're going to block everything vertically for our mobile size. Let's see. So again, do not float it, our unordered list item, or navigation bar. Media queries allow us to define different styles for different browser sizes. So again, you've got your tablet, desktop, and your phone. And we're going to name that file responsive menu styles.css, exactly as follows here. So, and I'll allow us to do some copying and pasting, but I want to stop and then see what the menu looks like, because I think if you just copy and paste it and it's all done, it's like, well, I'm not sure what that code does. Why is that in there? So we'll go slow so that we know what's going on. So let's first start, so the character set UTF-8, and it's a cascading style sheet document. Whenever you have the slash and the asterisk, that's just a comment out. So you can describe to somebody, if you're sharing a job, it could be somebody in your office, could be somebody across the country, but you can comment out what you did, or what, you know, to help somebody else understand what that tag does and why it's there. So anyway, we can do that. So let's go ahead and highlight the media query for the max width, unordered list. Let's see here. And then let's go through. Let's just go through this one first. So we'll borrow the @ symbol character set through just the background #333, so it's just a little bit. So Control-C that, and when you go into Notepad, you have to do a new Notepad and then File New. Otherwise, this whole Notepad goes away. That's just the way Notepad works. So I'm going to have to call up a version of Notepad. So we'll call up Notepad, we get an empty screen. Now I can Control-V. The other thing I'd like you to make sure of is that word wrap is checked. I think everything's pretty skinny, but you know, if you type something very long and word wrap's not there, it just keeps going on and on forever. Okay, and then the file name for this. So this is the file name here, responsive_menu_styles cascading style sheet. And again, you can copy that if you want to, so that it's exactly the same. And I'll go back there, so file, and let's go to save. It goes to save as anyway, but I want to make sure that it goes to my html5. So again, we're on a new project, so we want to go to the html5 folder. And then copy, so Control-V to copy. And it is a dot, be sure that there's a .css, so cascading style sheet, and that tells, identifies the file type. Okay, so responsive_menu_styles.css, save that. So then we can go back here and do, if I can find my refresh there. So there's not a lot that's going on here, and it looks horrible. So we'll identify. So we've not even told it yet to display horizontally, one to the left of the other, da 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 da. Our unordered list item, float none and block display. I don't know that that's even, yeah, we're not. So the float none is not changing anything. We can barely see what's going on here. And where we have the, I'll make that skinny here so you can see it all. I can block it further over that way. You can see it. Okay, so where we have the unordered list, which is everything, so the unordered list is affected, the list style type is none. That's the bullet, okay? You can probably barely see that, but the bullet's removed, right? Do you not, the bullet's not there anymore? The margin is 0, the padding is 0, any overflow is hidden. The background color, so 333 happens to be a really deep charcoal gray. Do you see that? So that's the little bit that we've done so far. The link colors are default. Do you still see the underline? Again, tough to see, but the underline is still there. We've not told it anything about, you know, change the color of the visited links, anything like that. Okay, so far unordered list is really what's being affected at this point. Okay, so we'll go back here again, and we stopped at this point here. So if we want to tell the list items to float left, let's see what that does. So, and you can borrow space in between, that's okay. Sometimes it's nice to have groups or blocks in between, just so that you've got space. It's just visually easier sometimes to identify. So let's just borrow the list item that's going to float left. So I'm going to Control C the list item that's going to float left. And again, you need to go all the way through the right curly bracket. So as we saw with styles before, so I'm overriding when I see the unordered list. Remember the period before something like the grid container, period grid container, that identified it as a class. And we created a division of space. It's almost like you're highlighting a block when you've got a division of space class and then close of division. It's kind of like you're highlighting it and you're saying, do this whole thing, 75%, center it, white, background, da 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 da. Whereas the body tag, the image tag, my unordered list, I'm rewriting the tag. Every unordered list is going to be overwritten, okay? So that has to be, you have to be aware of that so that now if I want to have regular old bullets, I can't. So I'm going to have to do something else for regular old bullets or restyle bullets in some way or rename my unordered list. So maybe I'm going to make it a nav, and we're going to, as we go and progress, we're going to do all of that. Okay, so I'm going to Control C on just the list item left. I'm going to go back to my little tiny cascading style sheet. And again, whatever spacing you like in between, and then we'll go ahead and paste it. So File, Save, and then let's go back again. And my little refresh there, see what happens. Okay, so we're starting to see a float left, aren't we? So it's float left of one another. Looks horrible, but we are starting to see that, it's floating left, so it's starting to horizontally align. And back again here, back again to your Word document. Let's see then, and we might want to create just a little border. So again, let's go ahead and highlight, and we might want to do the last. So the list item last child means, well, we'll go ahead and we'll just do that part right now. So Control C there, move into your little document there, and again, if you want additional space, so Control V, save it. Back again, refresh. So you should see, and we did a color, so why it's kind of sort of showing up is that we did a border at the right, 1 pixel solid with color of BBBBB. Looks to me like it's kind of a gray. Okay, but I have one at the right still, so I may not need to have that. So that's where we'll go back to here. And I want to tell it for the list item, the last child has a right border of nothing. Does that make sense? List item, last child, I don't want a border. So we'll copy that. And again, I'll paste that. Save it. back to see what happens, and it just removes that little, and imagine again, this is going to be shoved to the right eventually, the whole thing. So I wouldn't need to have a border because it kind of already closes off there. Okay. And let's see, this stuff is the drop down, the hover. We haven't added our drop down content yet. Nor the current. So the anchors, yeah, we'll add all this because we'll then be able to see it. There's going to be padding in between, centering in the middle. So for each list item that is an anchor, actually I want to be in the index one. For each list item that's an anchor, it's going to be displayed inline block. So again, the horizontal version, we're going to change the color. We'll align it differently. We're going to add a little bit of padding. You can add padding all the way around, so there actually is a top, a left, top, right, bottom. We're only adding padding in a couple of areas. Text decoration of none. Remember that underline that's still there? So this should remove the underline. So again, we'll do a little bit at a time. So let's borrow what's here, the list item for the anchor. And we're going to call it dot drop button. And every list item, as well as our class, will have this effect. So we'll Control C that. And again, move to your responsive. And again, if you need to make more space visually, you can do that. So we pasted it. And then I'm going to save it. Back here, refresh what we did. So it's kind of starting to come along a little bit better. And maybe, actually, I think the only thing I write align is contact. Okay, so we added padding around it. We added the color gray, I think is what that is, some sort of a light tone. We center aligned the content inside our little padded cells, and that's for every anchor. So that's each one of our okay, I should make that one a well. All right, so then if we want to hover over it, so currently got a mouse, and I could click volunteer, but remember we don't have an activities page, so it's not going to work. The only one that probably works is recreational hobbies, and it goes there. Everything else doesn't go anywhere yet. But there's no mouse over or hover color, which might be kind of nice. So again, we'll go here and we'll add a little hover color to our anchor. So again, I can copy. Control C to copy that back to your responsive design. And again, I might add space, Control V, so we're adding to the list item, to the anchors, a hover, also to, once we get the drop downs and the drop button, the hover color is going to be red, whatever color red happens to be for this particular, it's a pretty regular red, but again, red can be pink, light blue, whatever you want to add. Okay, so we save that back here, again, refresh. And I added high contrast color so that you could for sure see it. This would probably, unless I had a theme of kind of charcoals, blacks, and reds, I don't know that I would choose these colors. If the oranges and the blues were kind of my tones, I might modify. Again, I'd be looking for high contrast, so that's why I've used a light color inside that black bar. I want to make sure that it's legible. In low light conditions and all sorts of things, I may, maybe that font size I want to make a little bigger. Maybe I want even an Arial type versus this one. So there's all sorts of things that you can do, but again, we're just kind of using the defaults here for font and such, and creating our look and feel. So then the next thing we'll do is the list item drop down. We don't have a drop down yet, but we're going to display that as inline block. And actually, we may want to, before we even do some of that, we may want to add our drop-down content. Let's do that. So I don't know if that's in this document. Yes, it is in this document. Okay, so let's kind of go ahead a little bit here. So you currently have these three, right? You've got your unordered list, you've got index, your recreational hobbies, and your resume, and they're all pretty normal, meaning that you start your list item, you end and there's an anchor within, and it's properly nested. So I've got my anchor, opening, closing anchor, opening list item, closing anchor. You do not have the class of current yet. We're going to have to add that later. You've got your recreational hobbies, you've got your resume. What we don't have is that activities eventually is going to be a drop down. So that's like your volunteer activities. For me, it's, you know, not too exciting stuff, but I volunteer on the Missoula College Faculty Association, and I volunteer to sit on Faculty Senate. So those are kind of my two. And if you don't know what they are right now, you might have to think about what you do for volunteerism. It could be that you babysit for your sister or brother. That would probably be a really huge volunteer activity. But you may have other things you do within the community. You may have done some Habitat for Humanity. Maybe you volunteer at a shelter or food drives or something like that. Whatever you do, some sort of volunteerism. And we'll need to add, first of all, the list item for the class dropdown. And that identifies that whatever we identify as drop-down affects activities, and that within activities, remember there's been a little bit with drop button. So again, that's going to be affected by the volunteer activities and child pages within, as well as drop-down content with those two items. And we will have a division of space. So the class drop-down content, we have to add our division of space. The list item, again, it's kind of weird. So we've got this opening list item and closing list item. So we're not closing each of the list items. So they're identified a little bit different. And then the last one, we'll try again something a little bit different with the contact. I might want to float right just the word contact. So again, we're just adding elements so that you can combine whatever you like and don't like. And then again, and the unordered list. So let's go ahead and we'll copy, let's do a little by little. So, because some of it you have, and then so let's just first of all grab the list item class equals drop down within quotes, and then ending your, within your HTML bracket. So Control C that, and we'll go to index, and I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so that it looks kind of normal. Okay, so I want to be after resume, so go ahead and click there, and I'm going to go ahead and tab key in. And I'll do a Control V. So I want my little list item to begin there, and then I'll enter key. So for activities, I don't need the list item anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that. Activities, I need the anchor hyperlink reference, so that part's okay. Activities, HTML. Then after HTML, I need to add the class equals drop button. So again, you can either type it or copy and paste it. So class equals drop button, Control C that, and Control V. you need to make sure that there's a space, and I'll get rid of this too. I may want to tab key that in. It's hard to see when it floats around, isn't it? So we want something that looks like I've got my list item beginning, my classes drop down. It is for an anchor that links to activities. There's a class associated with it. Again, the words you use is fine, but volunteer activities. This list item, we can go ahead and end, and I'll just enter a couple of different times there. Remember that list item is not required until so it's a part of this whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to have to squish this up again so we can see everything. So then the next thing we'll do, so we've got our volunteer activities. We ended with our anchor right there. And then the next line, so we have a beginning division of space for a class equals drop down, and what we call it could be anything, but we're going to define it as drop down hyphen content. So we'll copy that. Oops, I don't want to go there, I want to go there, and we'll paste it here. So division of space, drop down content, and then these two files, so we'll have to create a bunch of files today so that we can link and try make sure that the links work. But you may call them volunteer 1 and volunteer 2 at this point, unless you know exactly what the names are. So I know that I can name mine mcfa.html. Faculty Senate, I might want to call it faculty_senate.html. So I kind of know what mine are at this point. But again, just to create the space, if you want to name them volunteer 1 and volunteer 2, you can. So I'm going to borrow those. And again, I have to close my division of space. So I'm going to borrow all the way through the division of space, the close of it. So whatever two, and again, you can copy and paste that and then fill in. So Control C, on my index, and I want to be there, Control V. I'll make mine look all pretty here. Let's see, so I don't need that. And I may want to tab that in a little bit here. Maybe I want just to space that. Anchor. So this is kind of the whole area right there. I'll leave that highlighted for a minute. So again, we're defining a list item that's going to be a drop down. So we'll have some style associated with drop down. The name of the button, the navigation element, is going to be volunteer activities. It links to a file that's called activities. And again, I can begin my anchor and end my anchor. That's good. Then we have to create a division of space, and it's going to be called drop down hyphen content. And again, we'll style that. So because we've got different names, we can style it differently. And that we're going to block down. So that's going to be a vertical. And I'm calling mine again. Your names will be different. MCFA, Faculty Senate, so type whatever is appropriate for yours. The name of whatever you do as your volunteer activity should change. The name of what you do for your second volunteer activity should change. So we're just doing 2, so at least there's 2 things to block down. Some of you might have more things you volunteer for, and that's okay. We end our division of space. We end our list item. So this whole thing. Okay, and then the last thing we'll do, and let's go ahead and file save this. Come back here, refresh. So there's a little bit that we're seeing. In fact, it looks really messy right now. We've not blocked content to the right yet. We're going to do that in a second. What we do have is 2 files, but they're not in a block format yet. So one of them drops down, but then they inline block with one another at this point still, and they don't hide. you know, so they need to be vertical, they need to hide and go away until I come to volunteer, and then they should drop down for me. Okay, so back, let's go back to this document. So a quick, easy, let's float right that contact, and that's a real quick one where I can just highlight, and I want to get the space in between there too. So remember, it's a list item. Whoops, I grabbed too much. Sometimes it's hard to grab just what you want. I'll do that. So Control C, back to my index file, and on contact, I want to be in my list item. I want a space. Control V, and I missed, I know, grabbing that last quote. So I have to have the space between my list item and style. So I'm telling it how to look, and I'm telling it to float to the right, wherever that right is, to float to the right. Okay, and then we can save that. And then I can look at it, and contact just simply floats to the right. And it doesn't matter what size my window is, it floats to the right. But everything looks all goofy when I make it the phone size. That's not attractive. Okay, so we have some problems, obviously, still. Okay, any questions? Do I need to stop and slow up a little bit, or call? Again, you have access to that document there.
Could you just highlight again the drop-down portion? Because it's not showing up.
The whole thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to...
Do you want that bigger? I can make this whole thing quite a bit bigger here, maybe. Okay, does that kind of help?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was there, so the home, recreational hobbies, resume is all completely normal. Where things get different then is I'm beginning my list item, but I don't have activities until one whole section down. I've got to identify a class called drop down, and again, the names are mine. They're probably tutorials through the World Wide Web Consortium. The names can be your own. But drop down, and then finally I have my anchor hyperlink reference to the file activities.html. And again, you need to have your quotes spacing in between each one, otherwise it doesn't identify that there's a separation. Oh, class, oh, I've got to do something with that. And then there's going to be a class defined for drop button, so some characteristics that will change because of drop button. I'm calling it volunteer activities. Again, you can call it something different. I have to end my anchor so that it's properly nested. So my anchor hyperlink reference begins, it ends here. Then I have to have a division of space for those two that are going to drop down. So those are kind of special and unique. And I'm going to have drop name is drop down hyphen content, and that's where I'm going to tell it. Don't float left of one another, drop down vertically, so it's going to display block, not in line. So we'll have to change what we've done, because remember, we're within that unordered list. Everything that's within an unordered list item, if we tell it to do something, to display a certain way, it's affecting all of it. So now I've got to create other styles or classes to tell it, no, don't do it in this part. So, and again, I'm linking to a couple of files of which we've not made yet. We've not made resume, we've not made contact either, nor have we made activities. And then the float right is just simple. Did that help?
I might just have to go over again.
Okay.
Yeah, I might just be missing one.
Okay, and I can help you after class if something's not quite working. Okay, and then the float right, was that okay with contact? Okay, so that one works all right. All right, so then go back here again. So, and I mean, if you need to, you can copy and paste this whole thing and fill it in, you know, like replace what you have. What we have not done yet is identify, we have not created classes, and especially current. I mean, that's not going to do anything. In fact, here we've got these classes that are not quite behaving yet. So that means we need to go back to, I think we ended with hover. Did we end with hover? Let's go back to our cascading style sheet. So we have, again, the media screen. It's not really doing anything quite yet. We've got some other instructions we need to add here. So for our unordered list, again, remember we removed the button, list style, or the bullet, list style type of none. We've changed any margins or padding with that bullet, and the overflow is hidden, which there isn't any overflow yet. The background color was that charcoal gray, kind of deep. The list item, so each of them are going to float to the left of one another. I guess I should do that backwards visually for you guys. We added that border that's in kind of a light gray tone, and it's thin and it's solid. The last child, so that very last element, I don't want a border. Border none. So now the list item and drop button display inline block. So remember this one. Drop button. Where does the drop button begin? There's our little drop button right here. So that's why it's still displaying inline block. That means it's horizontal. Okay. We colored it white. We centered the contents. We added a little padding. The text decoration of underline removed. And then we've got that background color of red. Okay. So the next part, we'll go ahead and add the list item for drop down is going to display inline block. So we'll highlight that. Control C, move that to your responsive file, and Control V to paste that. And this one, let's save it. I'm not sure, some of these don't always do anything right away. This one does not do anything quite right away. Okay, whoops, I need to. So the drop-down content, if I go here, and again, this is really hard to see, but what we're about to copy and paste here. So for the drop-down content, display should be don't display it. So it should go away. And we'll stop right after that. The position should be absolute, so it should stay where it's at. We're changing the color, we're changing the width, we're adding a little box shadow, and the Z index is 1. That's just a view on one on top of one another. So let's go ahead and highlight that and copy. And again, the drop-down content is that drop-down, but the drop-down content should be those two. Okay, so I'll go back to my responsive design, Control V to paste, file save it, back here. So hopefully I want it, now it's not displaying for me, but the drop-down content went away. So we're not yet adding instructions to view it. Okay, so we'll stop here.